When she was murdered, she was only 29 years old and the mother of a 5-year-old child. In the initial emergency report, the cause of death was determined to be suffocation. The killer stood over the body and had no qualms about confessing to the murder, and the initial report was completed with his own words, where he said, "I wrapped the scarf around her neck and squeezed it so hard that she couldn't breathe." The body was transferred to the forensic department, and the expert examination of the body revealed a more horrifying aspect of this crime. Marifat had been killed in a different manner. A terrifying method that the killer fabricated a story about, claiming he strangled her by wrapping a scarf around her neck out of fear of revealing the truth. Hello friends, welcome to the Confession Channel. You are watching and listening to another case from our series of videos. The case of the brutal torture and murder of Marifat Karimi, a woman from Salmas, under torture. If you are interested in confession reports from criminal cases, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon next to it so you don't miss our new videos. She was severely tortured, much more brutally and horrifically than you can imagine. The forensic report was beyond human imagination. It was truly unbelievable that a human could inflict such horrors on another human being. I'm not even considering the fact that the victim was his wife, a mother to his child. Even if you say she was a complete stranger, what kind of monster do you have to be to imprison a young, defenseless woman in a cold, damp basement for 40 days? Each day you throw a piece of bread and a bit of water in front of her, and in return repeatedly attack her with a belt and chain, burning her entire body with hot skewers and cigarette butts. The poor woman is beaten and tortured so severely that she doesn't even have the strength to stand on her feet. Amil, during this last act of violence, goes to her again intending to beat her, but Marifat has passed out. When she doesn't get up despite his calls, he starts hitting her with fists and kicks, punching her head so hard that the woman's skull fractures under the heavy blows from her husband. Then, when he realizes it's too late to lessen the severity of his cruelty, he quickly wraps a rope around Marifat's neck and strangles her, so he can later claim he suffocated her. In his later confessions, Amil stated that he truly doesn't know if Marifat was already dead before he wrapped the rope around her neck and strangled her, or if she died at that moment because she didn't struggle to survive. On Thursday, February 16, 2023, a man named Jafar Kishgar called the Urmia Police Emergency Center 110 and said he had killed his wife. A team of officers from the police station was dispatched to the location. And there they encountered the battered body of a young woman identified as Marifat Karimi, who had been killed by her husband. The husband had no hesitation in confessing to the incident. Jafar Kishgar was arrested on charges of premeditated murder of his wife and was sent to the Urmia Intelligence Office. Marifat Karimi's body was also transferred to the forensic department, and with the forensic report, the shocking details of this crime were revealed. Up to this point, almost everything was clear. The victim was a 29-year-old woman who had been brutally tortured and murdered by her 38-year-old husband. The murderer himself confessed to the killing and had no problem telling the truth. The only issue and ambiguity in the case was the reason and motive behind this crime, which, incidentally, was the only thing Jafar tried to hide. The spark for the brutal torture and murder of Marifat Karimi dates back to about 5 months before the crime, which was the last days of summer 2022, where Jafar Kishgar's young brother, who was recently married and the husband of Marifat, was killed in a car accident. Jafar's younger brother, who was only 26 years old, was killed instantly when, about a month after his wedding, he was overtaken with his car near Urmia and went under a truck. Jafar's only reaction to this tragic incident and the untimely death of his brother was that his brother's wife was left without support and he should marry her. The proposal was welcomed by Jafar's 19-year-old sister-in-law, but she set one condition: Jafar must divorce Marifat. Jafar is financially well off and is considered wealthy in his area, and he thought he could win over his brother's wife with money. However, she was firm in her condition: divorce Marifat and marry me. As the saying goes, the brother's burial shroud had not yet dried, but all Jafar could think about was how to win over his brother's wife. Therefore, when he realized that he couldn't satisfy her with money, a house, or a car, he decided to fulfill the conditions set by the newly widowed bride, and chose to divorce Marifat. What complicates the situation is that Marifat is also not willing to agree to the divorce. Even when their case reaches the family court, she writes and signs that Jafar's addiction is the issue, not his remarriage. To achieve his new love, Jafar has only two options. First, to convince his brother's wife to marry him as is, and second, to persuade Marifat to agree to the divorce, since he can't force the first option. He chooses the second option. Jafar Kishgar imprisons his wife Marifat in the basement of their house and tells her that she must stay there until she agrees to the divorce. However, Marifat does not give in, and Jafar's beatings and tortures increase day by day until Marifat could no longer endure the beatings and torture. And on February 16, 2023, she was killed by her husband. Marifat Karimi's body was handed over to her family 3 days after the murder and was buried in her hometown village near the city of Salmas. And just like that, the chapter of this 29-year-old mother's life was closed. And now let's hear about the fate of Jafar Kishgar, the ruthless killer who, out of anger and impatience, brutally murdered the young mother of his child. Jafar was taken to detention on charges of abuse and murder of his wife. He had no problem confessing to the murder, and his interrogations did not take much time. Even the crime scene was reconstructed and Jafar was sent to court with a murder indictment. The court session began with the reading of the indictment against the accused, and then it was the killer's turn to defend himself against the charges. However, Jafar had no defense for himself and only expressed regret and remorse. The judge was waiting for the victims' families' statements and their request for punishment to issue the final verdict. The victim's father, as the legal guardian, took the stand and said he was willing to forgive in exchange for custody of the child and, of course, the blood money for his daughter. This request was the most dreamlike offer possible for Jafar. It was like hitting two targets with one arrow. Not only would he escape severe punishment, but he would also get rid of his 5-year-old daughter, making it easier for him to pursue his new love. Jafar, who was financially well off, agreed with the victim's family on a sum of 1,300,000,000 tomans for the blood money. By paying the blood money and relinquishing custody of his daughter, he managed to obtain their consent and escape the punishment for premeditated murder. Ultimately, Jafar was tried for the crime from a public perspective and received a 4-year prison sentence. However, much sooner than the completion of his prison term, he was able to be released. And the latest reports from local journalists in Urmia indicate that Jafar served only 11 months in prison, and in 1402 he was pardoned and released. Moreover, he sat at the same table with his young sister-in-law, for whom the mother killed her child and married her. Thank you for staying with us up to this moment. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do so to support us and our activities.